Some students asked me just to repeat explaining the question tag. I only need, guys, 5 minutes to completely explain the question tag. And the question tag is extremely important, as I told you guys, in speaking. Okay, now if you can see this picture, I need you to notice that if you have verb to be in the present and in the past, notice is, are, was, were. If you have modal verb, this is it, you have to repeat the same, or even if you have verb to do, if you have do, does, did, you have to repeat the same verb in the question tag. First of all, guys, the question tag is not a complete question. The question tag should be existed or attached within a sentence. You have to use the question tag in a sentence because the question tag cannot be used alone in the sentence. So you have to use a sentence or any statement, and you notice that the question tag should be attached to the sentence or statement. Keep in mind, guys, that the main goal of the question tag isn't looking for the answer. You are not looking for the answer because, to be honest, you already know the answer, but you need the listener to speak. You don't want the conversation to stop, so you need the listener just to complete the speaking with you. So notice that if you have verb to be, which is are, was, were, or any modal verb, you have to repeat the same verb. You don't have to change it at all. And as I told you, if you have do, this, did, you have to do the same. The second rule, guys, if the statement is positive, it is not negative, you have to write the negative in the question tag. So notice this is the verb, are, this is are. I didn't change the verb. This is, this is, this is was, this is was, this is were, and this is were again. Now, the next rule, as I told you, if the sentence is positive, you have to write the negative, which is not. The not should be written in abbreviation. I mean, you don't, or you can't write not like this in the question tag. This is wrong. You have to write it in abbreviation. Rule 3, you have to be careful about the subject because you have to repeat the subject that is mentioned in the beginning. So notice you, this is you, this is he, this is he, they, and this is about the modal verb. You will pass. So notice want you. Keep in mind that want is the abbreviation of will not. And if I want to write it in the abbreviation, I have to write want. So the same modal verb, I don't have to change it. And don't forget that if the sentence is negative, you don't have to repeat the negative in the question tag. You have to write the question tag in the positive way. Now, too much students, guys, asked me this question. What if I have main verb? I mean by main verb, what if I have a verb like go, run, speak, drink, eat, sleep, watch? All these verbs are called main verbs. If you have any main verbs in the sentence, you have to write do, this, did. So please be careful about this rule. So do, this, did if you have this main verb. And you have to be careful because do, does is in the present time and did is in the past time. So notice the example here is saying you speak English. You have to say don't you. So notice that you takes do. And because speak is in the simple present, don't forget that I have to use do, does. And absolutely with you, you have to use do. And if the sentence, because the sentence is positive, you have to write the negative. I didn't change the subject at all. Keep in mind that if the subject is plural, like John and Sarah, for example, you have to write they. And again, don't forget that the question tag doesn't accept any names. You have to replace the names with the pronouns. For example, if you want to say John studies Spanish, you cannot say doesn't John, you have to say doesn't he. So I replaced the nouns like for example, John, with a pronoun which is he. And because studies is in the simple present, as I told you, I have to write do, does. And because John is a singular name, I have to use does with singular names and even with he. And because the sentence is positive, I have to repeat or I have to write the negative. And don't forget that the negative should be written in abbreviation. Finally, guys, notice that the studied is in the simple past. And because it is in the simple past, I have to write did. The example is saying you studied for the exam or test. I have to say didn't you. So these are the modal verbs. Be careful about them because I have to write the same modal verbs. There is something, guys, you have to be careful all the time. If the sentence has two verbs, notice that we have, studied, this is the auxiliary, have, has, or maybe had, this is the main verb. If the sentence has two verbs, be careful, you have to stick with the auxiliary only. For example, you have studied all the week or you are studying. Bravo, all the week. So notice that haven't you, I have only to stick with the auxiliary. I don't have to complete. I mean, I don't have to write the main verb at all. So you have studied all week, haven't you? You had arrived before he left, hadn't you? So please, you have to stick with the auxiliary. Again, the auxiliary could be is, are, was, were, have, has, had. And as I told you, I have only to write the auxiliary. I don't have to write the main verb at all. So notice here, I didn't write the main verbs. But be careful about something, please. If you have the verb to have alone in the sentence, for example, you have a car. Now, if you want to say that you have a car, the verb to have here should be considered.
Don't you?
Bravo, you have to use do, does, did. Please, again, if you have the verbs, if the sentence, again, has, have the verb to have, which is have, has, had alone in the sentence, please, you have to be careful because you have to use the verb to do. For example, if you want to say he has a car, he has a car. Please be careful because the question tag is what? Doesn't. Bravo,
Doesn't
ya Rawan. Bravo, doesn't he? Please, this is the most important rule in the question tag because too much students say, for example, too many students. So we say, for example, he has a car. They say that hasn't he. So be careful about the verb to have because only if the verb to have is attached with another verb, which is the main verb, the verb to have should be considered as auxiliary, and I have only to write the auxiliary. So be careful because, again, this is the most important rule in the question tag. So this is the next page. Notice that the next page here we have the negative statements or sentences. And as I told you, if the statement or sentence is negative, you don't have to repeat the negative in the question tag. The example is saying you aren't a teacher. You have to say are you, not aren't you, because notice not in the question tag, I don't have to repeat it at all. And this is about the verb to do because you have to write the same verb because the example is saying you don't speak French. Do you? You didn't study for the exam. Did you? So please, again, you have to be careful of the verb to have because you have to use do, does, did, just like the main verb. Okay, now, as usual, like any grammar rule, we have some exceptions. Keep in mind with the exceptions that we have in this page, notice that if the example is saying I am late, you have to say aren't I. I know that, guys, that I have to use am with I know that. But because in the question tag, the doesn't accept the negative, the negative like aren't, you have to replace with are. So I'm late, you have to say aren't I, please. This is the first exception. If you have negative, for example, I'm not late, what is the question tag? I'm not late.
Are Wasn't.
What?
Wasn't.
Yeah.
Weren't.
Am
Do I?
I?
Do I?
Am I? Am I? Question mark.
عشان ما لنا نيجاتيف عشان
Bravo, Muhammad. So guys, please, if it is negative, like I'm not late, you have to say am I. But only if it is negative. Yes, please, because the bravo, Rawan. The doesn't accept the negative in the question tag. Please be careful. This is really important. And this is an exception. Too many students, as I told you, forget this rule. Or maybe they are not aware of this rule. And the second exception, if you have let's. Don't forget, guys, that let's is the abbreviation of let us. Please, let us. The abbreviation of let us is let's. So let's go home. You have to say shall. So all the time, if you want to say let's, you have to use shall, please. And notice that I used we. If you want to ask me about the reason that I used we, not you, for example, or he, she, it, because we have us. And the subject of us is we. And because the subject of us is we, I have to write what? We. So
Wasn't.
please. Oh,
Wasn't.
bravo. What is it, Rihab?
Wasn't.
Be careful, okay? You have to use we, please. Now, the second page about the next exception. Keep in mind, guys, that we have pronouns in English that are called indefinite pronouns. When I say indefinite pronouns like nobody, no one, this is no one, none,
Weren't.
nobody, please. Okay, these pronouns are called, as I told you, indefinite pronouns. So be careful because you have to deal with these nouns as negative words. You notice that nobody, nothing, or none, for example, they already have no. So these pronouns, again, are negative. And because they are negative, you don't have to repeat the negative in the question tag. So notice the example is saying nobody went to the meeting.
Weren't.
Oh, bravo. I have to say didn't. This is main verb, Rihab. Went.
Yeah.
If we have main verb, we have to use do, does, did. Please be careful. So I said, did they? I didn't say, didn't they? I know that we have to use didn't they because we don't have negative no, we have negative. Nobody is a negative word. Okay? So these words are negative, like barely, rarely, hardly, neither, seldom. The meaning of seldom, or maybe, yes, seldom has the same meaning of barely or rarely. So these words are negative words. Because they are negative, you have to be careful in using the question tag. So notice the next example is nothing is ready. You have to say is it, not isn't it. By the way, let me show you the most familiar negative words in English, in the English language. I have to show them to you, and I think the negative words are existed in negative inversion. Let me search about this lesson. Negative inversion, where is this lesson? Okay, because I cannot find it. I think, is it in writing? By the way, let me search about negative inversion and let me show you the most important negative words in English, because you have to keep them in your mind. You have to be familiar with them, because maybe you want to use them in speaking or maybe in writing. By the way, I have already published the lesson of negative inversion on YouTube, and it's not the time to discuss this lesson. We have to discuss the negative inversion, I think, in level 4. Okay, so let me scroll down to the negative words. So these are the most common negative words in English.